There's no exceptions to that, and we'll certainly continue to give it our priority. We may, in fact, put him on the top 10 list. We'll make a decision next week.
Armchair, Whitey, his friends call him Jimmy Bulger, is living large, at large. The latest photograph of the avuncular assassin, the one on the right, gives him a quizzical look, as if he's asking whether the FBI is really looking for him after all, which remains a continuing doubt among other enforcement agencies who feel burned by the FBI.
A lot of you have gotten that there are perhaps unclear or allegations still out there, and the theory that we're not really out to catch him. And I'm here to tell you, and have been for the last 2 years, we are out to catch him.
Matt Damon may have gone to Hollywood, but this Southie star of a blacker order will now go to every post office in America. Bulger made the most wanted list today, just 2 weeks after FBI Director Louis Freeh came to Boston and was beleaguered by questions about the FBI scandal that could be called Whiteygate.
Part of the, if you will, extra reason to put Whitey Bulger on the list is that part of what he did and part of his way of operating was to corrupt, at least we know, at least one now former FBI agent.
At least one. That's an uncomfortable truth for the local FBI and for the FBI as a whole, it would seem. The poster will tell you Bulger was a major crime figure dealing in drugs, loan sharking, and gambling, that he's violent and carries a knife. But what it doesn't say is that Mr. Top 10 worked for the Bureau as a prize informant with what some agents say was carte blanche to commit any crime short of murder.
I'm here to tell you we're out to get him.
Still at his side, the FBI believes, is Catherine Grieg, the slender blonde dental hygienist with a strong affection, it appears, for poodles as well as pit bulls.
Were told by Stephen Fleming and James Whitey Bulger that they had sources in the Boston and Quincy police departments, inside the Massachusetts State Police, inside the Norfolk and Suffolk County District Attorney's offices, and that these sources provided information about investigations into Fleming and Bulger. Another FBI document reveals Fleming and Bulger were aware of undercover police watching them. They copied down the license plate numbers of undercover police vehicles and monitored police radio transmissions. Still another FBI memo states that both Fleming and Bulger had sophisticated debugging equipment costing over $12,000 in 1984, which they routinely used to detect probable bugs. FBI Special Agent John Connolly states in a 1984 report he would meet with Whitey Bulger at his Quincy condo around midnight if he needed to speak with him. He would park a safe distance away and then walk in, until one day Whitey warned the agent of a red Chrysler Cordoba, believed to contain 2 undercover state police who were surveilling him.
FBI didn't have enough on its hands trying to explain that one of its top agents has been arrested and charged with spying for the Russians. The Bureau may have an even bigger problem trying to explain its 25-year relationship with the notorious boss of the Irish mob in Boston, James Whitey Bulger, whom the FBI recruited as a secret informant to get information about Bulger's arch rivals in the Italian Mafia. In exchange for that information, the FBI, in effect, gave Bulger carte blanche, which allowed him to get away with robbery, drug dealing, extortion, and according to a federal indictment, the murders of at least 19 people. What's more, one FBI agent has been charged with tipping off Bulger 6 years ago that he was about to be arrested, and that let him get away. The 71-year-old Bulger hasn't been seen or heard from since. And while his whereabouts are a mystery, Whitey Bulger's victims have been turning up all over Boston. In the past year, authorities acting on tips from members of his gang have dug up the bodies of 6 people Bulger himself allegedly tortured and killed. Eddie McKenzie, who worked for Whitey Bulger, took us to one gravesite where 3 bodies were discovered.
The government says these are people who were killed by Whitey Bulger.
Yes.
They say that 19 people were killed. Does that number seem right to you, or?
I think you should multiply that by probably 3 or 4, and you'd be closer to right than you would with just 19.
What?
You're talking 70, 80 easily.
Do you think that the FBI bears any responsibility for any of these people who were killed?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Nobody knows more about the FBI and Whitey Bulger than Eddie McKenzie, who was given immunity in exchange for his testimony against rival drug dealers. McKenzie is the first member of Bulger's gang ever to speak publicly about Whitey Bulger and his $100 million criminal empire.
How would you describe Whitey Bulger?
He had such a stare of blankness, no compassion in his eyes that just would horrify anybody. You could be 6'6", 360 pounds, the toughest guy. I've seen people almost go to the bathroom in their pants in his presence. He was so scary.
If you had to give a job description for what you did with Whitey, what would the job description be?
You know, leg breaker, drug dealer, scumbag.
Leg breaker?
Yeah, you know, one thing Whitey always told us was if you have to have a fight with somebody, you don't just knock somebody out and walk away. You pounce on them. You try to bite their nose off, bite their ear off, jump on their ankles, their wrist, anything. Stop breaking things.
Sounds like you'd do anything for him.
Absolutely. He was my Caesar. He was my boss. And, you know, in reality, what do you strive to be like your boss?
What did you admire most about him?
His ability not to get caught.
And he hasn't been, even though there's a $1 million reward out for information leading to his arrest, making Whitey Bulger the second most wanted man in America, right behind the terrorist Osama bin Laden. Until his disappearance, the job of handling Whitey Bulger as an informant was assigned to FBI agent John Connolly. But sometime in the late 70s, according to a federal indictment, Agent Connolly actually became a member of Whitey Bulger's gang, a partner in his crimes. The most devastating charge against Connolly is that he leaked classified FBI information to Whitey Bulger about a traitor in Bulger's gang. Soon after that, Bulger allegedly killed the traitor and a friend who was with him. What's more, Bulger enforcer Eddie McKenzie says Bulger told him that Agent Connolly served as a lookout while the two men were murdered.
They were killed in broad daylight. It was unbelievable. We're talking, and I'm saying, Jesus Christ, Jimmy, man, you got balls to do this. And, you know, he looked at me, goes, I didn't have to have balls. I had Big Brother watching over my shoulder that day. I had no worries.
Big Brother was?
Big Brother, John Connolly in the FBI.
McKenzie says Connolly was sitting in an unmarked sedan a block from the murder scene with binoculars and a walkie-talkie, which Connolly used to communicate with Bulger.
So you're saying that John Connolly, an FBI agent, was a lookout on a mob hit?
I'm just saying that James Whitey Bulger told me that Big Brother was looking out for me that day, and when I said Big Brother, he said John Connolly.
What did that incident tell you about Bulger's relationship with the FBI?
Oh, he owned him. I knew right away that they were sleeping together. I was like, this guy is unbelievable. I mean, I melted. I was like, I want to be with this guy forever. I'll never get caught.
While Bulger was supposed to be giving the FBI inside information about the Italian Mafia, he and his gang were also continuing to commit violent crimes, allegedly with the blessing of John Connolly and other FBI agents. Robert Fitzpatrick, now retired, was the number 2 man in the FBI's Boston office during the 1980s, and an expert in psychological profiling of criminals. One of his first assignments was to interview Whitey Bulger to assess how good his information had been.
One of the things that came to my mind immediately was that, geez, this guy's a psychopath. I detected a great deal of lying. I mean, the guy turned out to be what I would call a pathological liar.
So you're saying that the information that he was giving to the FBI wasn't the truth, could not be trusted?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Fitzpatrick recommended to his boss in the Boston FBI office that Bulger should be terminated as an FBI informant.
And did that happen?
No, sir, it didn't.
Fitzpatrick says a year later he made a second formal recommendation, this time to FBI headquarters in Washington, that Whitey Bulger be terminated as an informant and prosecuted. That recommendation was also ignored. even though Fitzpatrick says he had reliable information at the time from several law enforcement agencies that Bulger was involved in drug dealing, loan sharking, and murder.
So you have information that, one, the guy's not trustworthy, two, that he's been involved in a murder, and you recommend that he be closed down, and your recommendation is ignored again.
Yes, sir. My recommendation is close this guy. But again, I guess the feeling is that he's giving information about the wise guys. That information they deem to be more important, and he's left open.
What's more, Fitzpatrick says he told FBI officials that he also had information that FBI agent John Connolly knew about the crimes Bulger was committing and protected him.
Connolly became the informant for Bulger. And in effect, Bulger is now inside the kingdom, if you will. He now has the keys to the FBI vault, to the FBI kingdom. Bulger can get any information he wants through Connolly, and, as we now know, did. That, to me, is shocking. And I might add, I'm angry over the fact that people were killed or murdered. I'm angry over the fact that it went on for so long.
Let me ask you a difficult question. As a former FBI agent, do you in any way hold other FBI agents, the Bureau itself, responsible for these murders?
Yes, I do. Yes.
John Connolly's relationship with Whitey Bulger lasted for more than 15 years. And according to the indictment, FBI agent Connolly was rewarded by Bulger for his work. Just a year after he became an informant, Bulger allegedly gave Connolly a diamond ring. Over the coming years, Connolly, on an FBI salary estimated at about $60,000 a year, managed to acquire assets that included a $400,000 house in an exclusive community outside Boston, a $300,000 summer home on Cape Cod, and according to Eddie McKenzie, Bulger told him he gave Connolly this townhouse in one of the most expensive areas of South Boston.
Yeah, if you combine all of those homes, you're probably looking at $1.5 million, $2 million worth of real estate.
So you think he gave him this house as a gift?
That's what I heard, right out of the man's mouth.
McKenzie says that Bulger even furnished Connolly's house and that other FBI agents were routinely given free merchandise from an appliance store which Bulger operated.
I carried a refrigerator here from the Broadway appliance store. I remember John Connolly pointing out beautiful state-of-the-art televisions, VCRs, video recorders, cameras.
And all for free?
You know, I was standing right next to the man, Whitey Bulger himself, when he says he doesn't pay for nothing here.
So what did he get in return from the FBI?
He killed over 30 people. I guess he got away with murder.
John Connolly, who is free on bail, declined our request for an interview, but he made a brief statement after he was indicted last October on 9 counts of racketeering and obstruction of justice, including a charge that, in effect, he helped Bulger become a fugitive by tipping him off just hours before he was going to be arrested.
I am innocent of the malicious charges that have been leveled against me in this case. And I would ask that all fair-minded people refrain from forming a judgment in this case until you have heard my facts and my evidence brought before a judge and a jury.
As for the charge that Agent Connolly acted as a lookout when Bulger allegedly killed 2 men, Connolly told the Boston Herald that is, quote, absurd. He says he was working at the time of the murders. But corruption within the Boston FBI office goes beyond the case against John Connolly. His former supervisor, Special Agent John Morris, has admitted accepting $7,000 in payoffs from Bulger's organization. And another agent, Paul RICO, is under investigation to determine his role in the framing of 4 innocent men, 2 of whom spent 30 years in prison for murders that were actually committed by a mob informant who worked for Agent RICO.
I think our worst nightmare would be to have us judged on the basis of the acts of a couple of rogue employees.
Charles Prouty is the special agent in charge of the FBI's Boston office.
Let me briefly touch on the indictment of former FBI agent John Connolly. He's charged with committing crimes as far back as, I think, 1976, and as recently as just a few years ago to protect Whitey Bulger and his criminal organization. You run the FBI office. How do you respond to that? I mean, that's one of your guys.
The crimes that he's been alleged to commit are that whole situation is appalling to me and to every other FBI employee.
Agent Connolly denies receiving any gifts from Bulger and says his actions met FBI guidelines for handling high-level mob informants and were approved by his superiors. Charles Prouty says those guidelines have now changed, requiring more oversight and accountability of FBI agents. As for the whereabouts of Whitey Bulger, Prouty admits the trail is cold.
How does a 71-year-old man elude capture for 6 years? How does he do it?
He's a smart individual. He planned for years for the contingency that he might have to become a fugitive. We believe that he has stashed money throughout the United States. He already had false identification made, and he is very, very clever.
Eddie McKenzie says the FBI could find Whitey Bulger if it really wanted to.
I believe that he's on the 10 most wanted list because they're not looking for him, but they want us to think that they are.
You think the FBI doesn't want to find him?
No.
But why wouldn't they want to find him?
Because of his marriage to the FBI over the past 2 decades, all the information that he has. You know, if they find this guy, he might open a whole can of worms. They're probably happy that he's not surfacing.
Well, all I can say about that is that's absolutely untrue. We are doing everything we possibly can to arrest him.
Meanwhile, Whitey Bulger, a known master of disguise, has not been seen in 6 years. McKenzie says his former boss could be just about anywhere.
He could be in a rocking chair right now with an old lady's outfit on, laughing at America right now. Everybody's looking for him. He's just a master. And that's the thing you respect. That was the amazing part, his ability not to get caught.
Then Agent John Connolly, the defendant in this case, solicited Whitey Bulger, notorious gangster of the Winter Hill Gang, as an informant to bring down the Italian mob in New England. Prosecutors say shortly after that, Connolly, Bulger, and another member of the Winter Hill Gang, Stephen the Rifleman Fleming, formed an illegal alliance, where Connolly not only received information from Bulger and Fleming, but provided them with information that allowed them to continue illegal activities and may have led to 3 murders and Whitey Bulger's disappearance in 1995 before his prosecution. Defense attorneys are expected to argue that Connolly was simply following FBI protocol, that he didn't do anything in his relationship with Bulger and Fleming that he wasn't supposed to do.
As head of the powerful Patriarca crime family, coordinated the activities of that family with the Winter Hill Gang, allegedly run by South Boston's James Whitey Bulger and Stephen Fleming of Quincy.
Together or separately, these groups sought to promote and control illegal activity through violence and fear.
The indictment lists 7 defendants, all charged with violating 2 counts of the RICO racketeering statute. Other charges include extortion, including requiring monthly payments from legal and illegal businesses, conspiracy, loan sharking, and witness tampering.
I emphasize that these are indictments, and we still have yet to come a number of important steps, including obviously obtaining convictions. If successful, we believe this will deal a serious blow to organized crime in Massachusetts.
The 90-page indictment dates back to 1965. Stephen Fleming and another defendant, Robert DeLuca, have been arrested and were in court today. And DeLuca's attorney was unimpressed by the lengthy indictment.
It's really kind of the Greenpeace movement in federal law enforcement. It's a recycling of much of what's been around for years.
Officials say 2 of the defendants are expected to surrender. 2 are in custody, and 1 has been on the lam for years. The 2 highest-profile defendants, Salemi and Bulger, remain at large.
Mr. Fleming and Mr. Bulger out there thinking that they've escaped the net. The strong message is that law enforcement will continue the effort until we get them.
The FBI regularly arrested the leaders of the Boston Mafia based on wiretaps, all set up by FBI informant Stephen Fleming and his partner James Whitey Bulger, now a fugitive. Fleming is a defendant, and he claims he did the FBI's bidding for 30 years under a promise of immunity, and now has been betrayed.
And everything he had been promised by the FBI occurred. They dismissed a murder case, they dismissed a attempted murder case, and they dismissed a federal flight to avoid prosecution So all those things occurred. That promise was delivered.
The government said Fleming and Bulger had no immunity. Their motive for informing was to knock out the competition. But Fleming himself will take the stand, according to his lawyer.
Doesn't that expose him to some danger?
I don't think so if he tells the truth, and he will. I'm not concerned about any dangers.
But the FBI might be concerned if Fleming can prove allegations that an agent took $5,000 from him and Bulger and that the two were tipped off to wiretaps and arrest. The other defendants claim the FBI's secret dealings with informants Fleming and Bulger cast a terminal taint on the wiretaps, which account for most of the evidence against them.
And it is our contention that this enterprise doesn't exist, that his loyalty was with the FBI, and that the very foundation for this prosecution, rests on very fragile territory.
He's known as the senior citizen bandit, and he's been very busy, robbing 3 Southern California banks in just the past week. A gun-toting, baseball cap-wearing hold-up man somewhere in his 60s or 70s who's causing a stir. Because of speculation, he's actually the notorious James Whitey Bulger, alleged boss of Boston's Irish Mafia, charged in 18 murders and on the FBI's most wanted list with $1 million reward for his arrest. A longtime FBI informant who vanished a decade ago.
What we're finding is they're very similar physical descriptions, primarily in the facial features.
Seal Beach police say it's hard to tell.
Without a more current photo of Mr. Bulger, it's really hard to say. Again, facial features are similar.
But they say their town would be a great place for the 75-year-old Bulger to hide if it is him. The Seal Beach bank that was hit Tuesday is close to Leisure World, a gated senior citizen community where Bulger could blend in. The FBI is saying very little. The Boston FBI spokesman saying the senior bandit appears taller than Bulger. A Los Angeles FBI agent saying they haven't ruled out the senior bandit, but adding, we haven't ruled out Santa Claus either. But then the FBI's never liked talking about Whitey Bulger, their one-time informant.
So what did he get in return from the FBI?
He killed over 30 people. I guess he got away with murder.
As Ed Bradley reported on 60 Minutes 3 years ago, Bulger was an FBI nightmare, an informant who continued his organized crime career, racketeering to murder with the help of an FBI agent who was later convicted. Then Boston FBI agent in charge Charles Prouty said he wasn't surprised that Bulger vanished.
He planned for years for the contingency that he might have to become a fugitive. We believe that he has stashed money throughout the United States.
If true, then why would he risk robbing banks, if this is Whitey Bulger? Meantime, investigators are on the lookout for the old man in the baseball cap and sunglasses, elderly, elusive, and armed. Jerry Bowen, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Fleming and Whitey Bulger may have become so friendly with one of their FBI handlers, they actually gave him money. The Fleming affidavit alleges that at a meeting with the agent, Agent John Morris said he was having serious financial problems and that Bulger and Fleming loaned Agent Morris $5,000 in cash that we had with us. Fleming's affidavit says the money was never repaid and there's no record of it. At the trial, Judge Mark Wolf is going to have to decide whether Fleming was promised immunity from prosecution in exchange for acting as an FBI informant. In exchange for that, his affidavit alleges the two men enjoyed a special relationship with the FBI, which included warnings to them. He charges from at least 1969 through 1995, it was the practice of the FBI to advise James Bulger and or me of pending criminal indictments and investigations.
In 25 years, the Boston neighborhood known as Southie was ruled by James Whitey Bulger, the head of the violent and often deadly Irish mob. At his right hand sat his most trusted lieutenant and enforcer, Kevin Weeks. 60 Minutes correspondent Ed Bradley sat down with Kevin Weeks Sunday.
Kevin Weeks is a soft-spoken 49-year-old native of South Boston. But don't be fooled by the low-key, matter-of-fact way he answers questions about his life of crime.
You seem to have committed every crime in the book. Let me know if I've got all of this right. You beat people up?
Yes.
Put them in the hospital?
Yes.
Shot, stabbed people?
Yes.
Helped kidnap people?
Yes.
And you were an accessory to murders?
Correct.
That's quite a resume.
It's the business we were in.
The business they were in was organized crime, and what set Whitey Bulger's organization apart was his penchant for violence. Weeks says it was all part of the folklore of this Irish working-class neighborhood known as Southie.
Was it a tough neighborhood when you were growing up, Kevin?
You had to fight. You didn't have to win, but you had to fight.
On these streets, Whitey Bulger was known as a vicious gangster who never hesitated to use violence. Weeks, who had a reputation as a tenacious street fighter, caught the crime boss's eye while he was working as a bouncer at a local bar. Over the years, he became Bulger's most trusted confidant.
What did you do for him? What was your job?
Anything he asked me to do.
Kevin Weeks has written a book called Brutal, The Untold Story of My Life Inside Whitey Bulger's Irish Mob. And Mr. Weeks is with us this morning. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Why'd you join the mob in the first place?
Really, I don't know if I joined it or I was drafted.
You had a chance to go to prep school. You had a reasonably good mind. Some people said you might have even gone to Harvard. That's a pretty wide dichotomy there between Harvard and being running around with a bunch of mobsters.
Yeah, it's I grew up in a tough neighborhood, and I guess I was attracted to the criminal element.
Yeah. As Ed just recounted in that piece, you beat a lot of guys up, accessory to murder, put people in the hospital. Do you feel any guilt? Do you feel any remorse for those acts?
It's something I live with, and I can't change the past, so I don't dwell on it. I just try to move on.
Yeah. Is being in the Irish mob in Boston, is it like The Sopranos? Is it like that at all? Is there a code? Are there similarities?
In the sense that there's supposed to be. I mean, amongst all criminals, that you don't turn, you don't give up your friends.
Yeah. And in the end, who informed on who here? It turns out Whitey was plugged in, right?
Yeah, Whitey was plugged in. Stevie Fleming was plugged in long before Whitey was, and they've been informants for years.
Yeah. Did you feel betrayed by him then?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, it was supposed to be a one-way relationship, that we were receiving information from law enforcement. Instead, as I say in the book, they were given information.
Here's Whitey Bulger. He's your mentor. Does anybody really know where he is now?
I don't believe so.
Will he ever be found?
Probably not.
Why not?
I think, he's probably over in Europe somewhere. He's under an alias, and I think, when he dies of natural causes, because I don't think they'll ever find him, that he'll be buried under that name.
One of your nemesis was Howie Carr from the Boston Herald. There's a description of the book as how you were getting ready to kill him. Were you really going to kill this guy?
Yeah. Yeah.
And how were you going to kill him?
I was going to shoot him with the rifle.
And in the end, why did you back off?
He came walking out of the house with his daughter, a little girl. She was like 7 years old or so. They were headed towards a silver Volvo. He had it by the hand, so couldn't take a chance at, maybe the bullet fragmenting or ricocheting and hitting her, or just, killing her father in front of her. That would have been a, traumatic experience for us, so we just passed on it.
Wow. What do you do now?
Well, I work, trying to develop a few businesses. I just, and I enjoy my leisure time.
Wow. Do you feel like you're in any danger from your past?
Not really, but, nobody's involved in, they shot the president, didn't they? So anyone could be had.
Kevin Weeks, very interesting conversation. Thanks very much for taking the time to speak with us.
You're welcome.
All right. We'll be right back. You're watching The Early Show on CBS.
Begin this morning with a bombshell arrest overnight of the man who was right next to Osama bin Laden on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. Mob boss and suspected killer Whitey Bulger is due in a court in Los Angeles later this morning. And CBS News Justice correspondent Bob Orr is in Washington with the latest on this. Bob, good morning.
Good morning, Chris. Well, it seemed for more than a decade that the FBI was just chasing a ghost, tracking down reported sightings of Whitey Bulger all around the globe. But that chase ended quietly last night on the U.S. West Coast.
Boston mob boss James Whitey Bulger was captured in a Santa Monica apartment house near Los Angeles late Wednesday night, ending a worldwide manhunt that spanned 16 years. Bulger's arrest came just 3 days after the FBI launched a new campaign asking people to be on the lookout for the mobster's longtime girlfriend, Catherine Grieg.
This is an announcement by the FBI. Have you seen this woman?
The 81-year-old Bulger, one of America's most wanted men, faces 19 counts of murder, narcotics distribution, extortion, and money laundering. In a 2006 60 Minutes expose on CBS, Kevin Weeks, Bulger's longtime henchman, who eventually turned against him, described his notorious boss as a violent, cold-blooded killer.
He stabbed people, he beat people with bats, he shot people, he strangled people, run them over with cars.
You said also that he liked killing.
Yeah.
Explain that to me.
After he would kill somebody, it was like a stress relief. You know, he'd be nice and calm for a couple of weeks afterwards.
But what makes Bulger's criminal career all the more remarkable is that in 1975, the alleged head of Boston's Winter Hill Gang, Bulger himself, began working for the government as an FBI informant. It's charged that in exchange for information, law enforcement occasionally looked the other way as Bulger ran his deadly gang.
He was giving up some of his own people. He was giving up the competition. He basically made a deal with the FBI. They gave him carte blanche to do what he wanted.
Bulger's life of crime was the inspiration for the 2006 Martin Scorsese film, The Departed. But Bulger hardly needed Hollywood to cement his reputation as an almost mythic criminal figure.
Now, Bulger and his girlfriend, Catherine Grieg, are expected to make their first court appearances sometime later today in a federal courtroom in Los Angeles. Chris.
Bob, I want to talk about this FBI publicity campaign just out for 3 days and already yielding a major, big-time result here.
Yeah, it's amazing. The FBI flat out says the recent appeal for information directly led to this arrest. Somebody apparently saw the pictures. They tipped police that perhaps Bulger and his girlfriend were staying in that apartment building in Santa Monica. Now, neighbors have been saying that Catherine Grieg was somewhat talkative, outgoing and friendly. And it could be that kind of public interaction ultimately led to Bulger's capture. We hope to find out more later today from the FBI, Chris.
All right, CBS's Bob Orr in Washington. Bob, thank you.
Well, imagine how Bulger's neighbors in Santa Monica felt today. We asked Bill Whitaker to go to the neighborhood to see what he could find out about the mobster next door.
People in this beautiful seaside city lived beside James Whitey Bulger and his girlfriend for almost 15 years, but most never suspected a thing. Barbara Gluck lived on their floor and did see flashes of anger.
We would start to chat, and he would sort of scream, "Stop talking to her!" or "Don't talk to me," or "Don't," and there was a kind of what I call a rageaholic response.
Other neighbors will tell you the 81-year-old Bulger and 60-year-old Catherine Grieg lived nondescript lives in a nondescript rent control apartment. In a neighborhood full of retirees, Claire Osowski says they were hiding in plain sight.
A famous, notorious, guy, criminal, would you think he'd be living in a rent control building? Perhaps not, but maybe it's a good strategy.
To their neighbors, Bulger and Grieg were unremarkable, almost unnoticed. But when it comes to public records, they were almost non-existent. There's no public record of an address, no record that anyone ever called to the police to complain about them, no record of a traffic ticket, not even a phone listing. Of the two, Grieg, who became the focus of the FBI search, was more gregarious, out and about more.
She was just very ladylike, very well dressed, her hair swept back. She seemed to be a very sweet person.
Neighbors who recall talking to Bulger describe him as a curmudgeon.
He had a little angry way about him.
I love dogs, and I had found mine in the dumpster, and he told me how the people who put dogs in the dumpster should be shot.
Today, those words send chills down her spine. But until their capture, it seems the couple on the run found the perfect place, not just to blend in, but fade away here by the sea. Bill Whitaker, CBS News, Santa Monica.
Is that me? That's this dumb van.
Hey guys. They want the trash in the back. Who's got the trash?
Good bag.
guys are gonna start putting your guns in? Let's just slide him and let me get out.
Hand up there.
Okay, then just slide him. No, we're good. If you would have been too tight, you need that.
Okay, we're out. Thanks for staying, guys.
Copy.
Really quickly, one question.
No.
One question.
You don't want to talk to us for 1 second?
One super quick question.
Just even, did you ever see him? You did? Could you talk to us? No one else has said that. Can you just tell us one thing?
We've been out here all day.
What
did you know?
This is what I tell you 1 second.
You saw him. Can you tell us what he looked like? Anything?
He looked like an older version of all the pictures that were on TV.
And would
But
they
he always
say
wore
hello?
sunglasses.
Did he ever say anything? Was he friendly?
Not particularly.
Did you ever see his girlfriend?
Yeah.
Did you ever have a single conversation with him?
No.
So you just saw him. And I mean, are you shocked?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, you were living next to someone on the FBI's most wanted list. How do you feel?
Yeah. Well, it was scary to see all the cars around the apartment building.
Did you ever talk to her?
No.
No, you talked to neither.
Sorry, I've got to go to work.
Will you just give us your name just so we...
I don't know.
just your first name at least?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Sure.
What is it with people not willing to give their names for a mob story?
You guys think it's getting some room? He's gonna back
Sure.
this thing up, right?
Is he backing in here? Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Be careful. pure shock. Can we roll on this at the same time? Yeah.
How's it going in there?
Can someone let me know how far on the garage?
You guys can stay back behind that line, right? Yes.
What's in the bags?
Scratch ticket.
Are all those guns? Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, ma'am. You just got right in front of me. You're not supposed to be that close.
Oh, you're going to sign the paper?
Yeah.
Or your camera? No.
No? Not a, did you see him in
Couple of months, so.
When you interacted with him, did they ever say anything, or was it just like a regular neighbor, or was it kind of like a, don't bother me, or hey, how's it going? Welcome to the neighborhood, blah, 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 blah.
Some neighbors are friendly and some aren't, so they were not
Did they ever
friendly
talk?
or they weren't.
Did they ever talk at all, or?
No.
Never spoke to you?
A lot of parties, anything like that?
No.
Quiet?
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna swing in. Go ahead, you're fine. All right, I'll grab mine and then. Hang on a sec. Boy, the lights in here are weird color. Okay, just one more shot. Hang on.
Yeah, no, I sent you guys. No, I mean, I got the video. Yeah, and I took some video.
You should have said I need my tripod.
I cropped it out.
Swing around too, Scotty.
Go for it.
When he was around, you know, but he was just bringing drugs everywhere else, you know. He's bringing drugs to every other part of Boston. Kept it out of Southie, and just to me, he's just a rat, though.
What about Billy?
Billy is a great guy. Billy comes in here and shops all the time. Good guy. The grocery manager was just talking about meeting him the other day. Had no idea he was Billy Bulger. Told somebody he was told somebody on the way out, hey, that guy's a great guy, you know.
Why won't people talk to? Not a lot of people here want to talk to me about the Bulgers.
Nothing to talk about.
All right,
No.
thank you, man. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Pam Hennessy.
Pam Hennessy, and how long you lived in South Boston?
I have lived here since I was 5.
Do you know the Bulger family at all?
I know them to say hello, but that's all.
Everyone here knows them to say hello.
Just to say hello. Yeah.
What's you taught in schools here?
Yes.
What's
They go from underneath. Yes, please.
sorry. What's Whitey Bulger? You know, the Whitey Bulger thing. Everyone's making such a big deal out of it. What kind of reputation does he have in this part of town?
I think originally people thought he was kind of helping people. Later on, we found out maybe there were a lot of drugs that were brought in and a lot of crime. But a lot of people didn't know about that, maybe in the 70s, 60s and 70s.
He was something of a cult hero around here, it almost seemed like.
Yes, he was. In some ways, he was well liked because I don't think people knew really what was going on.
How about the Senate President? How about Billy?
Excuse me, say that again?
How about Billy?
As far as I know, he was fine. I liked him very much.
Why don't you think people here seem to want to talk? You know, I've walked into a few bars and they've yelled at me to get out. People here don't seem to like to talk about their business.
You know, I really don't know why. I couldn't tell you. Yeah.
All right. What's South Boston like?
Well, I love it because I grew up here and I know everyone and I see people I've taught in school and I see neighbors that I've, grown up with, and I like it.
How many years have the Bulgers been a big deal in South Boston?
I don't know. I remember probably at least 40, 50 anyway.
50 years around here.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, thank you, ma'am. I really
You're welcome.
appreciate it. Thank you. See, that wasn't hard.
Wasn't too
What's your name, ma'am?
Jean Shields,
And how long you lived in South Boston?
81 years.
81 years in South Boston. Tell me about the Bulger family.
The Bulger family, as far as I know, is a beautiful family. And he's a great guy. He has wonderful children, he and Mary. And he's brought them up beautiful. They've all gone to college. And I'm sorry, he has a brother that gets into trouble. I think, the newspapers have been pretty rough on him. Bringing him up every time his brother comes up, But they're a great family.
Did you know Whitey at all?
No.
What do you make of him?
Well, he's another character. I know. I mean, when I hear what he's done, it doesn't sound very good.
Yeah, there seem to be mixed feelings about him around here. For a guy who's, accused of doing a lot of things, there seem to be a lot of people here who still cut him some slack.
Oh, I couldn't do that. After what I've heard about him, I'm sure it can't be wrong.
Yeah, he's not a hero around here anymore,
no,
right?
No, I would say not. But the other problem is I just feel sorry that, with the rest of his family, sometimes they bring in to make people think that they may be the same way, but they're not at all. They're a beautiful family.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Do I look like... You look like magic.
I was going to say, I can't think of the Angelina Jolie's husband. What's his name?
Brad Pitt.
Do I look like Brad Pitt?
Yeah.
I think this is strong.
This is good.
Okay. Focus on it there.
So, and most of it on it too.
Yes, most of it.
Tell me about the Bulger family.
Well, they're a very well-known family in South Boston, and in fact, one part of the family has done a lot of good for South Boston. And the other part, well, you've read about it in the papers.
What about the other part, though? I mean, in some ways, Whitey still seems to be a legend around here.
Well, yeah, but I think that's pretty understandable. That would be the case in Chicago if you were talking about relatives of some of the gang members there, the Capones and the others. But yeah, you know, Whitey is pretty well known, and I think everyone knows his name here.
Billy doesn't seem to get much of the blame. No one seems to blame Billy for anything.
No, I don't think very many people do in South Boston, at least.
What's Billy Bulger's reputation around here?
I think his reputation within South Boston is pretty good.
He's considered. What's he considered?
Well, he's considered. For years, he was considered a leader in the neighborhood, and of course, he was a leader in the Massachusetts Senate and at the University of Massachusetts. So, I think he's a longtime resident, a longtime political leader. I think that he's well respected in the neighborhood.
Good. Thank you. I appreciate it. What's your name, sir?
Paul Tague.
How do you spell your last name?
Paul Tague. T-E-A-G-U-E.
Thank you very much.
avid reader with an interest in history, spends a lot of time at libraries and historic sites, and loves animals. And one more thing. According to his FBI file, James J. Whitey Bulger is a cold-blooded killer, the kind they make movies about, and they did. Tonight, after more than a decade as a fugitive, Bulger is in custody. Justice correspondent Bob Orr tells us how the FBI finally got its man.
As a career criminal, James Whitey Bulger rose to the very top of the FBI's most wanted list. But for the last 16 years, the notorious Boston mob boss was a ghost, leading authorities on a fruitless and frustrating worldwide manhunt. Despite countless tips and reported sightings from Italy to Indiana, he remained invisible. But today, there he was in federal court in Los Angeles. Bulger had finally been arrested late yesterday after he was tracked to this Santa Monica, California apartment. Richard Delorier is the FBI's top agent in Boston.
We have captured one of the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives, a man notorious in Boston and around the world for very serious crimes he is alleged to have committed.
Bulger headed Boston's Irish mob, a group called the Winter Hill Gang. He's charged with 19 murders, extortion, drug dealing, and money laundering. Bulger's alleged gangland activities and explosive temper were the inspiration for Jack Nicholson's character in Martin Scorsese's movie The Departed.
You dump 'em in the marsh.
But the film's popularity in 2006 did not help the FBI find its man. Public appeals and wanted posters brought no results until this week.
Have you seen this woman? The FBI.
On Monday, the FBI unveiled this ad focusing on Bulger's longtime girlfriend, Catherine Grieg. The spot, airing on daytime television and aimed at female viewers, described Grieg and her numerous plastic surgeries. Within 24 hours, authorities got a very specific tip that Bulger and Grieg were living in this apartment building. The FBI lured Bulger outside and arrested him. Then they entered the building, arrested Grieg, and confiscated nearly 30 guns and hundreds of thousands of dollars stashed in the apartment. Neighbors knew the couple as Charles and Carol Gasco. They lived in apartment 303, and for much of the past 15 years, it seems, had paid their $1,100 a month rent in cash. But sources say Bulger, armed with multiple passports, also moved around, reportedly spending time in the Caribbean, Fort Lauderdale, and London. The Bulger case has long been an embarrassment for the FBI. In the mid-70s, Bulger became an informant for the Bureau, providing information about a rival gang and even some of his own mob soldiers. But FBI agent John Connolly, assigned to handle Bulger, eventually went to work for the mob boss. Connolly was convicted for racketeering. In fact, it was Connolly's warning to Bulger that he was about to be indicted in 1995 that sent the mobster into hiding. Now, sources tell us Bulger at first was verbally combative when he was arrested, but he didn't resist. Now we're told he is talking a bit to federal authorities, and Scott, Bulger will be returned to Boston to face trial.
Thanks, Bob.
You're on Yappy.
Down the driveway here, so we're keeping a close eye on exactly what's going on here. This is coming very fast, backing right out here.
No, I don't.
I missed it, whatever it was.
Maybe we're just looking at it from underneath.
this morning. The former crime boss had been on the FBI's most wanted list for more than a decade, but now Bulger could embarrass the FBI because he claims he corrupted 6 agents and more than 20 police officers. CBS News correspondent Elaine Quijano reports.
After 16 years on the run, 81-year-old James Whitey Bulger and his longtime girlfriend, Catherine Grieg, arrived in Boston on a Justice Department jet and amid heavy security were taken to federal court in South Boston. Bulger appeared in court to face a host of charges, including racketeering and 19 counts of murder. For Patricia Donahue, who believes her husband Michael was shot and killed by Bulger 29 years ago, his capture is long overdue.
This could have happened 16 years ago, and I believe that they knew where he was and nobody did anything about it.
Officials say Bulger committed his crimes during his days as the ruthless head of Boston's Winter Hill gang. He turned FBI informant before going into hiding. After his arrest Wednesday in California, authorities found some $800,000 in cash in Bulger's Santa Monica apartment. Still, in court, he asked for a public defender. "Can you afford a lawyer?" the judge asked. "Well, I could if you gave me my money back," Bulger shot back. The judge gave Bulger 3 days to prove he can't pay for a lawyer. Looking on in the courtroom was Bulger's brother, William, once a powerful state senator. At one point, the brothers exchanged smiles as the court proceedings continued.
Now, questions are swirling here in Boston about what took so long to capture Bulger, who may have helped him, including his brother, and what he may be ready to reveal in court. Elaine Quijano, CBS News, Boston.
This morning we have surprising new information on what Whitey Bulger and his girlfriend did during their 16 years in hiding. The accused Boston mob boss says he wasn't hiding all the time, as CBS News correspondent Betty Wynn reports.
16 years ago, James Whitey Bulger seemed to disappear into thin air when he became one of America's most wanted. But as new details emerge about the once feared gangster and his girlfriend, it turns out their life on the lam wasn't necessarily a life on the run. According to a filing by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Massachusetts, after waiving his Miranda rights, Bulger told investigators he was living a life of leisure, taking numerous trips to Las Vegas to play the slots, where he claimed to win more than he lost. He traveled to San Diego, where he would cross the border into Mexico to purchase medicine. And most surprising of all, the former head of Boston's Winter Hill gang admitted he returned to his former hometown on several occasions in disguise, quote, armed to the teeth because he had to take care of some unfinished business. That even surprised longtime Bulger Lieutenant Kevin Weeks.
I don't know what the unfinished business would be. I mean, if he's armed to the teeth, I imagine he was looking for people.
Investigators say Bulger and his longtime girlfriend, Catherine Grieg, led a relatively comfortable lifestyle. After searching his Santa Monica apartment, the FBI found more than $800,000 in cash hidden inside the walls.
You would put in clips or some kind of a motor where you could open and close the wall and keep money and weapons in there.
On Monday, high-profile Boston area attorney Kevin Reddington announced he will defend 60-year-old Grieg. She faces 5 years in prison if convicted of harboring the 81-year-old Bulger. At a hearing today, Bulger will go before a judge to determine if he can afford his own attorney. At a hearing last week, he told the judge, quote, "Well, I could if they would give me my money back." Betty Wynn, CBS News, New York.
And joining us now is CBS News legal analyst Jack Ford. Great to have you with us, Jack.
Rebecca.
So as we just heard in the piece, there's this hearing today about whether or not he can obtain legal counsel through the court. Why is the prosecution pushing this point?
A couple of reasons. One is, the federal system has a public defender arrangement the way the states do. And the deal is, and we all know the warnings, if you don't have an attorney, can't afford one, we'll provide one to you. But the government doesn't want to be paying for a lawyer if somebody has, as we heard Whitey Bulger talk about, $800,000 stashed in a wall someplace, or if they have assets someplace else. So two things are playing out here. One is the government is saying, all right, let's find out if he does have assets that somebody's sitting on that could be used to pay for his lawyer, so we, the government, doesn't have to. The other is, I think the prosecution is trying to get a head start on taking a look at, well, what other assets does he have out there? Because if we do convict him here, one of the things we're going to do is, and they traditionally do, is we're going to try and grab all those assets and bring them back to us. So I think they're trying to do both things at the same time here.
Whitey Bulger's girlfriend, who we're told was on the run with him over all of this time, has obtained her own legal counsel. What kind of case does she have in front of her, and what kind of options are at her disposal?
Well, a couple of scenarios. If I'm her lawyer, I want to find out first, did she truly not know who he was and what he was doing? If she did know, was she just under such duress that she was afraid to either leave him or go to the authorities? Or was she an active participant? Was she helping out these things? And then I'm going to go and I'm going to talk to the prosecutors and I'm going to say, all right, what can we do for you? How can we help you in this case here? And then what can you do for us? So that, she's not going to spend as much time or maybe no time at all in jail. So it all depends upon what her relationship really was, but I'm sure her lawyer is actively talking right now to the prosecutors saying, can we work out some kind of deal here? Helps you and helps us.
And we will be actively talking with you, I'm sure, as all of this unfolds. Jack Ford, as always,
all right,
thanks.
Rebecca.
Pleasure.
The girlfriend of reputed Boston mob boss Whitey Bulger is changing her tune, and some of his victims not exactly happy about that.
Catherine Grieg was on the run with Bulger for 16 years. National correspondent Jim Axelrod is here with more on the story. Jim, hello to you.
Good morning, Gail. The headline here is that after first pleading not guilty last summer, Grieg wants to change that to guilty, and the key seems to be an agreement with federal prosecutors that she will not have to testify against her longtime boyfriend, Whitey Bulger.
Relatives of some of reputed mobster Whitey Bulger's alleged victims, who met with federal prosecutors on Monday, are angry.
She's pretty much, if you ask me, like everybody else, got a sweetheart deal.
They were told Grieg will plead guilty on Wednesday to 3 charges related to helping Bulger avoid being captured for 16 years. But while each carries a maximum of 5 years in prison, she could get as little as 32 months total.
She helped keep that guy on the run. We could have had questions and answered 16 years ago.
Last summer, Grieg and Bulger were arrested at this apartment in Santa Monica, California, where they'd been living under false identities for more than a decade. Law enforcement officers raided the home, uncovering a large cache of money and weapons.
Over $800,000 in cash, more than 30 firearms to include pistols, rifles, and shotguns, several types of knives, and several pieces of false identification.
Bulger, the head of the notorious Winter Hill Gang in Boston, was wanted for 19 murders allegedly committed in the late 1970s and 80s. He'd fled Boston in 1994 after a corrupt FBI agent told him he was about to be indicted. In a signed statement, Grieg admitted to a close personal relationship with Bulger, helping him obtain false Social Security numbers and birth certificates, but coughed up remarkably little about the weapons and money found in the apartment or any of Bulger's crimes.
I just think that there's been so many deals made, and nobody's in jail, everybody's walking around, and nobody's taking any consideration for the families.
As for Whitey Bulger himself, his trial is expected to begin in November. Will he look for a deal? According to associates and investigators, Whitey Bulger loves nothing more than a circus. He's 82 years old. If he's going to die in jail either way, then he may just opt for the circus of a trial. Guys?
Jim, nice to have you here this morning. Thank you.